Hi, everybody. It's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, The Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain, as free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion, and as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Celebrate Truth Radio. I'm your host, Robbie Davidson, and we've got a great show for you this evening. It is April 17th, 2021. This is episode 105. And it is going to be a roller coaster, I would imagine, tonight. I've been doing a lot of radio shows leading up to this one, as far as really concentrating on what's happening with my former church and pastor, Pastor James Coates, and Grace Life Church up here in Edmonton, Alberta. And the last broadcast, I talked about how that they had triple fenced the church and that they had put checkpoints up at the highway, not allowing people to get into the church, even onto the road. So people needed to walk about a mile and a half to even get to in front of the church. Now, what I didn't cover is what happened the next day after that broadcast. What happened was that the church itself, Grace Life, they weren't there at all. They actually met underground. That's right. Canada now has underground churches taking place. Guys, this is like stuff that's happening in China and Iran. You shouldn't hear about this in Canada. And I know a lot of people that are tuning in from America. You're like, oh, well, that's Canada. And guys, it's coming to a church near you. And this is why we all need to speak up on how insane this is getting. This has nothing to do with health. This is tyranny. This is just absolute overreach by the government, and enough is enough. People need to stand up. Many people were featuring Grace Life Church, and they had released the sermon the next day at an undisclosed location. And I would imagine that they'll be meeting again, either at the same undisclosed location or a new place. But they do have a lot of people, even on the elders, that have various places. And maybe that's what the way it's going to happen. But I cannot see the fences, the police, even the security that they put up at the church being put down anytime soon, because in order for that to happen, Grace Life Church would have to agree to the regulations, which they won't. And speaking of regulations in Canada, right now it's absolutely insane in Ontario. I'm from Alberta. We were talking about Edmonton, Alberta. Well, in Ontario, Ottawa, Toronto, that area, they're on absolute complete lockdown. They have curfews in place. It is absolutely insane. Again, they're screaming about variants, and that's the thing. Wherever you are right now, whatever state you're in, and maybe it's opening up, but I'm very fearful in the sense that they're going to keep this variant thing going all the time. It's not like they can be okay just with everything clearing up. It's like, oh no, there's all these deadly variants now. We've got to be careful, and everyone's got to get vaccinated, and the whole thing. And the whole unfortunate thing here in Canada, especially in my province, is they're not going now based on the 14 days to flatten the curve, as they said, based on overrunning the hospital systems. Now, what they're doing is they went to cases and said, oh, we got to watch the cases. It had nothing to do with deaths. It had to do with cases. Well, now they changed it again. And it's not about cases anymore. It's now about what percentage of the population have been vaccinated. That's right. They keep changing the goalposts. They keep moving this thing forward. It is seriously tiresome. It is insane what's going on here in Canada. Trudeau, the Prime Minister, just raised the ante on it. Anybody that does not adhere to the quarantine, if they're traveling and coming back into the country, if they try to do anything, up to $1 million fine now and imprisonment time. So, this is no nonsense, but we shouldn't be surprised when Justin Trudeau is talking about the Great Reset. He's talking about that this is such a great opportunity, as we've heard from many different world leaders. Building back better is what they say all the time. The new normal, building back better. You're going to hear about this over and over and over. Why? Because the Great Reset. Look it up. If you're tuning in for the first time to Celebrate Truth Radio, check out my previous broadcasts. They're on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Celebrate Truth. You can check them all out there. I've done many broadcasts on the Great Reset, not just to mention all the tyranny that is going on and the government overreaches. The Great Reset is something that everyone needs to understand and look into, because they are following the script, hook, line, and sinker. It is absolutely horrifying what they're wanting with the Great Reset, and it seems like they're not going to allow us any breath whatsoever when they're asking us to triple and quadruple mask. That's right. 1 mask isn't good enough. 2 masks isn't good enough. Now 3 masks. This is what they're saying. This is what they're pushing. Not to mention that before I thought it was all about the vax. Once we got the vax, everything was going to go back to normal, right? Nope. That's not what they're saying. Even if you get the vaccination, it doesn't prevent and it doesn't keep you from getting anything. They say you have to social distance. You have to keep wearing your masks. So wait a minute. Why would we get a vax? Why would we? It makes no sense. I'm not going to be a lab rat. I'm not going to be a guinea pig. Hopefully you're not going to either. Please do your research before you're injecting yourself with anything, especially something that's experimental. It is not approved by the FDA even. This is just something that's been accepted. It's been rushed. And to me, it's like Russian roulette. There's a lot of reports that are coming out. Scary times we live in. But anyways, I want to get right into my special guest tonight. He's no stranger to Celebrate Truth Radio. I've had him on many times, and also had him on one time when it came to him producing and rolling out his first documentary film, What If the Earth is Flat? And I'll tell you, what a piece of work that was. I remember when it was just released, and I got to see a bit of a screener at Take on the World. And it was absolutely amazing. I was really, really excited. And he gave me a copy of it to kind of look over. And I was like, man, if this is your first attempt, amazing stuff. It's called What If the Earth is Flat, I believe. And it is phenomenal. I've got my DVD, and I'm sure he'll be on to talk more about where you can get a hold of that and maybe what else he's got going on. But anyways, without further ado, let me bring on my special guest tonight. He's been on Now You See TV. You've seen him with Rob Skiba. You've seen him all over the place, and you're proud to see him in a lot more places. Mr. Jake Grant. Jake, how you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good, Robbie. It's good to be here.
Man, it's great having you. There's been so much stuff that we've been chatting about lately, and we'll get into that in an hour or two. But it just seems like with all the stuff that we're experiencing and talking about, it's great in ways to know that there's ways to kind of be outside of the matrix, so to speak, and things that will represent, people being free and not being tied to kind of the government system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing is people willing to have the conversation today, right? And I think it's in silence that the agendas can be pushed further even faster. But it's for people like you and me that have the care and the know-how to stand up and say, hey, wait a second. We saw the deceptions back in 2016, 17 with the space programs and the flat Earth topic. But, it was a preparation for, I think, a day and age that we are now in today where, it was necessary for there to be a skeptic in the back of the room saying, hold on,
yeah,
I don't buy all of this.
Yeah.
And we've seen the writing of the wall with other topics. And I think that's why it's so important to speak up now regarding, quote unquote science, especially in the face of, the long lasting impact it's going to have on our loved ones. And, and I think that's really, what, your heart behind, some of the things you've been reporting on and talking about is, and it's definitely my heart is, there's got to be a watchman on the wall. And if there's not somebody saying, hold on, let's not rush into something and let's look at all of the evidence and let's look at all of the agendas that are being pushed through simultaneously in today's world. Like the past 2 years, Robbie, has just been insane.
It is.
But I feel like it's a frog in a pot of water that's been set to boil.
Yep.
It slowly has been ramped up. And, if you look at what it's like now, like you said, the goalpost is being moved further and further and further.
Yep.
Well, we see that the long end goal is something that would shock people and scare people. But if they inch us to that line slowly and slowly, then eventually it becomes the new normal. And that's what's, really, we have to warn.
Normal. Yeah. Like I say, the world that we knew is not coming back. But what I find really, really fascinating, and I've mentioned this on a lot of my previous broadcasts, but what's the common denominator in all of this? And I keep telling people, guys, like no matter what I was doing in 2015 when I started Celebrate Truth and I started exposing the lies of scientism, and I was dealing mainly with the origins, the lies of evolution. But have you noticed that really the same old scientism lies are here? Who are the authorities? Who are now, I guess we do say, the ones that are basically, medical tyranny, scientific tyranny? This is what we're under. And these guys now have the power to shut down a church. It's not the police so much that are shutting down the church here in Edmonton, Alberta. It was the Alberta Health Services that enforced. So what they're doing is the enforcement arm, it seems, of the governments right now. They're using kind of the health. And now we get down to the science or scientism. And I just find it very fascinating that we're still dealing with the lies of scientism. Nothing has changed. They've just got more aggressive and they've got way more scarier. Never in a million years did I think within 5 short years when I created my channel that scientism would have the ability to lock people pretty much in their home or face a fine. And this is what they've done, Jake. This is what they've done. The doctors, the lab coats, they're saying, well, we've got all the data. And yet they have no empirical science done whatsoever. What's really tragic is what I was mentioning before the broadcast, Pastor James Coates went to jail for 35 days. Okay. Now his case is coming up in, May. Well, guess what they did? They basically postponed it. Why? Because they're going to be bringing science and doctors and all sorts of people to that trial. It's going to be a huge trial. Well, guess what? The government says we need more time to collect more data and more research. And what's more frightening is just 2 days ago, they basically, the judge overruled that they will be able to bring the actual minister of health into the trial to testify. So therefore, they've omitted that. And they're trying to omit that they won't have to provide any science whatsoever. Just the fact that people should obey. How insane is that? That now, even in a trial, even when people want to bring science to the table, they're not doing it.
Yeah, it's incredibly shocking. And really, the answer, let's just get to the bottom line, is fear. Fear is what would drive these drastic measures to shut down a church. Fear is what would cause somebody to scream across a grocery store and say, "Why aren't you wearing your mask?" Fear is what would cause somebody to say, "Look, I'm going to stay in my home and I will not going around anybody who even is a close relative until they receive their vaccination." And fear is what has allowed the pockets of big pharmaceutical companies to be stuffed to the brim. And unfortunately, it is also what has convinced the vast majority of the world population to basically fall in line to a product that is not, it doesn't have any liability. The time frame of these things is very important, because you see, when they rush through these products and they have these emergency clearances given to either the vaccination programs or these mandates that are dished out to the governors under states of emergency, one, it allows power, but two, it basically creates the perfect customer, the customer that is absolutely dependent on the system to free them from the box that they put themselves in by going along with it. And it's just shocking to see how fast the world can change.
Yeah.
None of us would have been talking about this a year and a half ago.
No.
But now we're in the pot and it's boiling quickly. And so, what are we going to do about it?
Well, that's the thing too, right? I mean, a lot of times, over the years, everyone was kind of talking about the New World Order and, how they're going to come down, and it was going to be this kind of slow, gradual process. But I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams could imagine this level of rapid just tyranny in such a short period of time. Like, I don't think anyone, and I know you can go back and you can find out how many people were actually predicting it like this, and no one got it, right? Everyone thought it different ways. No one saw it coming this way, and how quickly and what they've been able to do. And it surprises me that, they're getting people to line up for, an injection that really won't do anything for them. I mean, you have them now basically admitting that, no, nothing changes. I mean, I could kind of get it, Jake, if all of a sudden everyone that got their vax, they were back to normal and they had it good, and everyone that were anti-vaxxers, they had it horrible in life or whatever. It's one thing. But now what people are realizing is, even if I take this, it's not going to do a darn thing. Not to mention, you got Johnson & Johnson, you got Pfizer, you got all this stuff coming out, which I'll tell you the truth, I was praying. I didn't want anyone to be harmed by it, but I was really praying that something would happen and they would be exposed based on their rush or whatever the heck they're doing, where all of a sudden there would be some things that would alarm a lot of people. And I know, talking to people that aren't even truthers, they're like, man, I'm holding off. I'm holding off. Like, you know what I mean? I might wait, 2-3 years or whatever. Like, they're not anti-vaxxers, but they're like, whoa. I'm waiting, and especially with all this news that's starting to surface about all these damages and can you get any help for anything that you're damaged through vaccine damage? No, the insurance companies won't even cover you. I mean, the whole thing is really tragic. And now you're right. We're living it. We're right in the middle of it. And I mean, it's rapidly moving to the point where, Canada is unrecognizable. But I would go so far as to say, with what I've researched in the United States, I'm horrified at the level and speed of how quickly America is being transformed. I've said it on multiple shows. America has already been transformed. The question is, can it be stopped at a certain point of going, over the edge? But I really believe what they're doing now with the filibuster, what they're doing now in the government, what they're doing with executive orders, you're not dealing with Republicans, Democrats anymore. You're dealing with straight on fascists, communists, statists. I mean, you're talking about the upper echelon of the most extreme type of party you could imagine, which I think that even some Democrats are going to start shaking their head going, what have we done? What have we done?
Absolutely. I think really people have realized that the money really does direct the influence. And whenever you have the people with money pushing certain agendas, you're going to have drastic changes. You're going to have people falling in line, because it's all tied to, what the root of all evil is, the love of money. Well, no wonder, because it kind of directs the legislation. It turns the head of the politicians. And who has the most money, Robbie? Well, if you look at kind of where the flow comes from, some of the people raking in the most money are these big pharmaceutical companies that are producing these vaccines, because what they have, like I said, they've created the perfect customer. They have created a need for every man, woman, and child around the world to get a vaccine that is, they're exempt from liability. So what they've done is they've created the perfect product, and then they've convinced governments to buy this product, at the risk of their citizenry. And what it is it's tied to the fear of, something invisible, right? And so the fear of, I don't want to die, and everybody has that innately in them. And between me and you and other listeners out there that are Bible believing Christians, and we believe that the Word of God is true, and we believe that the Creator of heaven and earth, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has given us a set number of days. It helps us kind of escape the fear that is trying to be pressed on the populace. Mm-hmm. And what we see is that those people who don't have that trust in the God of the Scriptures, they don't have a relationship with the Messiah, Jesus, Yeshua. They have nothing to help on other than, those that they feel are either scientifically, more studied and learned than the rest of the population. And it's just another iteration of those men in white cloaks or men in white coats or whatever that we were dealing with several years ago when it came to various other aspects of Scientology and scientism. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's because the very career path that often ends up looking at themselves as gods simply because of the enormous amount of schooling that goes into their doctorate or whatever, it has elevated their mindset to be like, well, the science has to be right. And if we are depending on this structure, this pyramid scheme of science, and the people paying for the studies and the people at the very top of the pyramid with the big deep pockets that are pushing all the skewed views on how these rushed, experimental gene therapy vaccines actually affect the populace, it's all connected together. And what I'm getting at here is that, hey, guys like, the pastor in Canada that you were talking about, he realized that there is no reason to be afraid, because if the God of heaven and earth has set us and given us a set number of days, then what are we afraid of? Yeah. What are we so scared of? But however, that flies in the face of what the culture's God has become. And that God is, quote unquote, science. And because people are afraid of death, they will do whatever it takes to preserve their life. And even if that means injecting themselves with something that is DNA altering and something that is experimental, mm-hmm. because they're told, hey, this will give you a 80% chance to be less susceptible to this virus or whatever. And when you put it all together, it's a wicked and sinful world that has no trust in God.
No, it's fear. I mean, you nailed it 100%. I mean, it really comes down to fear. And Pastor James Coates has, mentioned that multiple times. He's like, guys, if you look at the age when people are dying, it is the normal age. People die, right? I mean, over 80% are people that are dying in old age homes and stuff like this. What I'm saying is the numbers don't warrant the level of overreach of the government as far as control. And he just got to a point and said, Jesus Christ is Lord of the church. He's basically, the government isn't. And he just said, I am not going to listen to the government. And he did a really, really brilliant sermon laying out Romans 13 and said, look, the government has right. And yes, we need to submit to the government when they do have authority, and rightfully so. But when it comes to the church, they have zero authority. Like, that is mandated. It's two different authority structures. So it was really interesting how he broke it down, talking about how you have the two different authority structures kind of sitting there. And and he just basically make a stand. So whether you're on the side or not, the fact is he stood to his convictions and even went to jail. And I mean, it was tough. I mean, he was in 2 weeks of solitary confinement because of the whole coronavirus thing. They had to put him in solitary confinement. Well, that's rough. You know what I mean? Like, he even said it was way better once he got into general pop, than being, in solitary confinement, because that is really, really tough stuff. And all he had to do was sign a piece of paper saying he won't preach. He won't go back to the church, and he could have been free. Like, he literally gave him the keys to get out of jail, and yet he wouldn't take it because taking those would basically violate his conscience. And I think that's 100% with what you're talking about. It's fear. And so many people, their God is science. And it's like the science. We trust science. Now they're saying that Biden we're so happy. We finally got a president that really, really, truly believes and trusts in science. And you're kind of like, what? What? Where's the science then? Show us this empirical science, And we've been saying this for a long time, Jake. You've been doing it, in the documentary and in a lot of the stuff that you've talked about this is the difference between the two. But I am just horrified at the level of how crazy of authority structure scientism has been able to take control of all the world governments. They're literally the muscle and the arm that are literally shutting down businesses, shutting down churches. And there's a lot more, on its way. So I think without people standing up and saying, guys, like, if we don't speak up, this is not going away. I know myself personally, I think this is going on for a very, very long time. And even going back to Pastor James Coates, he's gone on record saying that he doesn't believe we're ever going back to normal, nor does he think that this idea of quote unquote viral infections, whatever you want to call it, the new normal now is that we have to eradicate all of it. It's not like the seasonal flu where all of a sudden there was always things, there was always variants. Now it's like they're so scared of variants. And again, it's fear, fear, fear. But it's so strange how like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, no one was scared of the flu and yet it killed way more people. You know what I mean? Now they're talking about something based on the same lines of what that is. And now they're saying, oh no, there's a variant. Oh no, it's more deadly. Oh, we're going to have variants every year. So the question is, if their policy is to keep everyone at a level where, very few people need to be infected by it. So is this our new normal where it's going to be continual lockdowns, restrictions, ease up restrictions again, ease up restrictions again? What do you think with what you're seeing, Jake? How long do you think this is going to go on for as far as the pandemic portion of their tyranny?
Well, just like you said, Robbie, this is all about a reset. And the whole premise of the new normal terminology is to get us used to something that they don't intend to go away. And, the best example is what we see in 2001 with, extreme measures in terms of the TSA. And, we got to be careful because of, some of the events that happened in 2001. So we're going to enact extra measures in the airports. And, we're still living with that to this day. Mm-hmm. And that was called a new normal at that period of time as well. And, I find it very interesting that language is going around nowadays because really when you see, like you said, the goalpost being moved further and further back, it starts with 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then it's, we all need to do our part and be goodly neighbors and wear our masks everywhere we go. And if you don't, you're a bigot and a crazy person, or, you are risking the lives and health of those around you. And then it's going to become, if you don't bow down, submit, and allow us to stick this experimental, fluid into your arm, then you're not doing your part in society. And now what we're seeing is we're literally entering into a time and age where there will be a second-class citizenry. Mm-hmm. And to make comparisons to, 1939 pre World War II Nazi Germany and what they were doing to a certain population there, and making a second-class citizenry then, mm-hmm. We're really seeing the signs of that same system of fascism arising. But what is the iron fist that is leading it all is the medical industry. It is this opinion that a man in a white lab coat can dictate the laws and mandates of society, because if the science leads us to believe this, then we're going to enact this. But what it is it's the pure socialistic mindset that is now taking over a lot of the younger generation. And of course, you have the people in the 70s that were all sitting out in the field, smoking weed and tripping on acid, are now the people in government. Yeah. That generation grew up, and guess where they're at now? There are politicians. There are, and these people are the ones that believe that if they want to change society, then they must force the changes that Correct. They believe are the best
Correct.
upon society because they don't believe society's smart enough to do it on their own.
And deep down inside, they believe, and deep down inside, some of them really truly believe in their heart they're doing the right thing. Even if it's sacrificing, of the few for the greater of the many. I do believe that not everyone is just evil. I'm not getting into the debate as far as like the upper elite and all that. I'm just saying the average person, I think in their heart truly believe what they're doing is good. Like we talked about before, that some of these Democrats are going to be shaking their head going, what have we done? I think there's a lot of moderate Democrats that are horrified at the level of communist tactics they're seeing with the government they elected in. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. That's my whole point, is I think the intentions don't mean evil all the time. I'm not talking about the upper echelon. I'm talking about just the average person that was voting in these people. And again, we can even get into the voting thing, but that's a whole other, discussion as well. But from every single thing, what I keep seeing is a fracturing and a takedown of everything that we knew. They have to rewrite history. They have to rewrite everything. Do you know, Jake, that you're a racist if you don't take the vax? You know why? Because they're the ones that are most in jeopardy of, being risk and at harm of these, viruses. So you doing that, not doing that, shows that you're a racist. But everything, it seems, especially in the States, they're really going to town on this race baiting, and they're connecting it now, with coronavirus and all this sort of thing. So maybe you could kind of explain a little bit on that. I want to jump around some different topics, but we kind of keep the same central theme, fear and division. But have you noticed the incredible, from 2 years ago when I was in the States and I hardly could even see it. Now it seems like, racism is everywhere you look. The way the media portrays it is everyone that is born white is inherently racist, and all the founders and in America as a whole, as a country, is the most racist country in the world. This is what they're trying to teach the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with what you're saying with politicians is they have no choice but to go along with these agendas, or else they risk being severed from the body. They risk losing their seat at the table, so to speak. And that's why they are so willing to wholeheartedly go in with some of these agendas, whether it's the race baiting and the division that they're causing for a variety of topics. It forces them into this position where they must participate in an agenda that may be far more left than they ever intended to push. They might have just been, hey, I want to help my impoverished community. I want to help the minorities that have trouble getting up off their feet, but because there's kind of this flow going in an extremist direction, a direction that's far more left than liberals have probably ever outwardly been, saying that they were going to practice. It's just everybody's getting swept along because now it's under the moniker of the Democratic Party, or, whatever it may be. That's why we're seeing people that might disagree with the way things are going, but they are still participating and thus perpetuating the issue even more. And so, right now, Robbie, you mentioned on the race topic and the divisions that are happening in the country based on many different reasons, not just race, but, whether it's pro-gun, anti-gun, whether it's pro-abortion, pro-life, whether it's pro-vax, no vax, whether it's mask, no mask, whether it's Trumper or never Trumper, or if you're whatever it may be. I wanted to make this comment, and forgive me if sometimes I go straight to kind of a biblical lens.
No, that's
on this,
fine. That's great.
Really, it's such a big part in my life in bringing clarity to what's happening on the world stage. It is intrinsically connected to my worldview, so it's hard to not get spiritual about this, right?
Sure.
But what I wanted to make a comment on this division and why this division is catching my attention is this, Robbie, is whenever you see groups of people being divided into, this pile here and this pile there, to me, it's the sign of a harvest coming. It's the sign of a separating of the people of God from the world. And, whenever we look in the scriptures, we see this premise of the wheat and tares. It is said that the wheat and tares will grow up together until the time of the harvest. And then they are to be separated out and to gather the wheat into the barn, but put the tares into a pile to be burned. And, what we're seeing here is kind of a refinement of this land of, the Americas. And the West is this archetype of the rest of the world in terms of how they kind of step in line and follow the example. And so not only is it just a coming harvest period, I believe, here in the United States and in Canada and South America, but this is setting the stage for a worldwide harvest. And what does this harvest mean? Well, I think it's, the time is coming where people are going to have to draw a hard line in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have to decide whether they are going to stand up for their beliefs. They're going to have to stand up for what they truly care about. Or are they going to allow the lies and the trickery and the agendas of liberalism and Satan and all these different groups that want to divide and conquer? Are you going to allow those to categorize you and thus put you in the pile of the people that you might not want to be in a pile with? Because, that's kind of what I'm getting with the day and age that we're entering into, Robbie, is we want to be very careful with who do we end up being, put into the bucket next to, because when you look around to you, are the people that you are gathering together with and the people that become, the guy, you're shoulder to shoulder with, is that person fearful of the government to the point that they would turn you in if they thought they were doing a service to God? Are you standing or are you starting to be separated into a people that are so hateful of another group that they are willing to, burn and destroy just to get back? Or are you being separated into a people group that are going to stand boldly for righteousness, for good, for mercy? Are you going to be the people that are going to stand for liberty, for freedom, for the ability to choose what you put in your body? I find it funny, you have the pro-choice liberal crowd is not pro-choice about certain things.
Yeah, I know.
They are forced choice. And you know what? I am pro-choice. When it comes to vaccines, I'm pro-choice. If you want to put that crap in your body, you go right ahead. That is on you. But I will not be doing that. And there's a variety of reasons I will not be doing that. Some are religious convictions, such as the ingredients go directly against my faith walk. Not only that, my religious exemption is a health exemption. I believe that there's enormous danger and a lot of a body of proof of vaccine injury that seems to be just completely ignored by the mainstream media because they are trying to rush an agenda and they are trying to dupe the people that don't have the time to do a little bit of research. And that's the most tragic thing about this whole situation. And, why it is so important to speak up and to be these vocal people and use this opportunity of the freedom of speech that the Western world has been known for, right? To use this opportunity to warn those people that we love and care about, because not everybody is like you and me, Robbie. And I'm guessing the vast majority of people that'll be listening to this broadcast, not a lot of people actually have the time to stumble across somebody that, has strong convictions. Instead, most people are distracted by the day-to-day necessities of life. They're distracted by their 9-to-5 job. They're distracted by their favorite pastime or whatever. And I'll tell you what, we're in such a confusing and convoluted time that there are some really amazing distractions, Robbie. And that's why it's even more important for us to kind of hone in and focus on the most important things, to maybe take a little bit of less time off of your, fantastic futuristic game or your super enthralling, amazing TV show that you just love spending time watching, and take that, a little portion of that time, maybe more is better. That would be my suggestion, and focus it on the things that really count and matter, like reading your Bible, or, getting together with your family and getting a game plan and getting everybody on the same page when it comes to what you will and will not put into your body and what you will and will not do whenever that decision comes down that, you're not allowed to do this or go there and do that. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to be those people that have a game plan, or are you going to be taken totally unaware to the point where you are faced with that decision and it's been last minute, you've been, procrastinating the whole way. And when they say, look, all the science backs this up, and the doctor's right there, needle in hand saying, you need to do this. And if you refuse, then you're going to lose a bunch of privileges. Well, most people are going to full-heartedly give in. They're going to be like, you know what? I choose the easy life.
Mhm.
I choose the things I like. I choose the comforts, and I'm going to give in because so what? I'm going to just say that I trust them. But that's what's terrifying, is because in the end, they're going to try to put the blame off on, if there is injury events that happen, they put the blame on someone else. But it comes down to really the decisions you and I make, and the decisions, we make should have an impact on those around us, because we should have conviction. We should have a reason we do what we do, we say what we say, and we believe what we believe. And if you don't have an answer, maybe it's time to really look hard inwardly and figure out what it is you believe, because we're entering into a day and age where the people that are wishy-washy, the people that are wanting to be politically correct, and they don't want to step on toes, or they don't want to stand up for themselves, they absolutely are going to be swept away. And that's the really tragic, sad aspect of this whole agenda time frame that we're seeing. People are just falling in line with whoever has the strongest opinion. And they're like, wow, that sounds like a good cause. But when you really kind of take the time to think through some of these things that are coming on the world stage, whether it's the race agenda, whether it's the medical agenda, whether it's the monetary agenda, what is the long end game turnout of all of these things? Well, sometimes it's pretty terrifying. And the only way you're going to get caught up and get stuck in the trap is if you walk into it yourself. And at least that's what my perspective is, and what I'm trying to warn people I love and care about. And hopefully somebody listening to this will, maybe take my convoluted kind of, running around all these topics and be like, you know what? Maybe I do need to have some strong opinions, and maybe I do need to decide what I believe on, take the injection or not, or, what do I believe in God? Am I going to say science is my God, or am I going to say I trust in God to protect me from whatever it is everybody's so afraid of?
Yeah, no, I think that's important. And it doesn't matter really how crazy the world gets or how evil things become. God is in control, and greater is he that is in you than he who is in the world. And I think that's important for people to understand if they do have that relationship with the Messiah, with Jesus. I say this all the time, and it's so important because, again, God did not give us what? The spirit of fear, right? I think it's very interesting, in the Bible where it says that the fear is even a spirit. It's attached to a spirit, right? He says he did not give you the spirit of fear. So it is a very spiritual, supernatural type thing where fear can start influencing you in ways that are beyond biological, and people really need to hone in on that. Would you say though, Jake, that, and with what you're looking at, because, I talk to a lot of different people, and some people say, oh, we're in this right now, but, everything's going to turn out. I know I did multiple shows leading up to Trump, and, when Trump didn't win, there's so many people, and I think there's still a lot of them that are still holding out hope that next month he's coming back and is going to arrest everyone and he's going to be president again, which to me is like on the lines of delusional, in my opinion. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean, at a certain point, you've got to just accept the world you're in and not believe in delusions like all of a sudden everyone's just going to be arrested after it's all said and done. I understand having that hope, maybe beforehand, but when it was all said and done, they were saying, oh, March, he's supposed to come back in April. But besides that, do you think there's a possibility that, and I'm just going to use the political parties, I don't want to get into a political debate or anything, but I want to say, is there anything in your mind that thinks that we are going to switch off this communist kind of takeover under the Democrat Party over the next decade? Or do you think it's pretty much locked in? I want to ask you that first, and then we'll move on to the second question. But just in a sense, do you think there's going to be any change within the next decade, or we're locked into at least a decade of what we're looking at right now?
I believe it could go one of two ways. Either it's a slippery slope, and the communist liberalist agenda just progressively goes more and more to the extreme of total dictatorship. Or, within the next, few years, these events these characters like Donald Trump are used in a Hegelian dialectic type form or fashion to kind of enlighten the populace. And these people that stand up on the scene like Donald Trump, that really does sway and draw in more of the conservative crowd, is used to awake the masses to whatever the next great agenda is. And I really do feel like it could possibly be a bait and switch. If Donald Trump comes back on the scene, 2024, wins the election, there's this premise that, in Freemasonry, that the fool is also the great magician. And I definitely see that Donald Trump was put on the scene, and he kind of took on this role of the brash mouth and the guy who kind of exposed the swamp, right? His whole thing was drain the swamp. Well, could that be used to kind of back up this whole premise of the right hand and left hand path, as talked about in kind of the esoteric society of exposing the agendas of the liberals?
And I know there's that line of thinking. And again, I don't want to get into this because I've been very vocal. And even though, I know where you're going with this and I've heard that, and I'm not getting into a pro-Trump type discussion. But what I'm saying is I personally don't see it happening at all, whether or not it's a Hegelian dialectic or if it's sincere. What I see taking place is the fact of what they're doing right now is twofold. They're looking to actually completely modify the Supreme Court because they know once they basically get their cronies in there fully, they can completely take that out. So anything that happens goes to the Supreme Court. They lock it in. Good. But the secondary thing I see happening right now is the whole voting thing is complete sham. But what they're doing now is changing all the voting laws. They're going against the Constitution, which we've seen before. But right now with the border crisis that a lot of people aren't really talking about how serious it is, but you're talking hundreds of thousands of people are crossing. They're estimating millions by fall are going to be in, and they don't care. And you can clearly see that they don't care. They're not testing them for coronavirus, so that's a sham because these guys aren't even being tested. They're letting them go because they want them as the next voters. They realize that if they bring in another 2, 3, 4 million, illegals, and they're the new voting, then it is an impossibility. We're at a point right now that even if the voting is legit, even if there is a possibility that it could actually be legit, the numbers are getting to a point now where it can't be done. So I see it right now personally where they're securing all the things. What I've been watching right now, I'm horrified because they are literally making it so that it cannot be possible. Now, I believe in miracles, but what I'm saying is I don't think that this miracle is going to take place. Why? Because I don't believe God wants a miracle to take place in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Why? I think people need to go into a period of time, probably like the Egyptians, maybe not as severe, but to the level of really living under bondage, where people are crying out for their maker, where they're crying out to God, where they're asking and they're calling for that salvation. I believe that it got to such a luxurious standpoint in life where everyone was just, they didn't even know how good they had it, where I see tyranny happening. But again, to go back to the question, I see it this way as they're trying to secure it right now so that nobody else could come in. Even if they wanted to bring someone in, I don't even see it as their plan right now. Why? Because it just prolongs what they want to do. And there's always that risk that it might not go the way they want. If all of a sudden they've got everyone in the fear mode, they've got everyone in pandemic mode, they got everyone in race baiting mode, and they're moving towards what did they say, 2030 is the Great Reset is what they want. So if they're moving along that timeline, but they're securing everything in the States, specifically the States, because I've said this many times, in order for the new world to even happen in the first place, America has to fall. Well, I personally believe that America has fallen. The question is for how long? So right now we're looking at a fallen America. It literally has been taken over. Regardless of which way you want to look at it, it has. The question is, at what point and what is the purpose of it? And what are God's people going to do in this time of absolute tyranny and bondage? Because that is pretty much what's going to happen. You said it right at the beginning, Jake. You said there's going to become two kind of citizenries as far as second-class citizens, and already that is already developing. It's already developing. You're already starting to see it. You're starting to see the people turn against each other. The divide is taking place. So you're 100% spot on that. So I don't know if the time of politics is even part of their plan anymore. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but I just see it right now as why are they going so hardcore to secure the Supreme Court, take down the filibuster, take down the border completely, where they don't care how many illegals cross. They make a big deal of it, but yet they're hiding it from even journalists, even from CNN and all the media. They're hiding what's going on at the border. But some people that have been down there, it's horrifyingly bad. Well, what's going to take place is when you bring in 4, 5, 6 million new people, new voters. I don't think the numbers can justify it anymore. And they know that it's basically a numbers game now. And it's also, it would be mob mentality, and they want to conquer through division. And I just see that in order to bring, say, a Donald Trump back, it just polarizes everyone a lot more. And to me, it causes a little bit more confusion. I'm sure it might give some people hope. But again, what's going to happen then? He's just going to start stacking it, in the favor of the Supreme Court. What he did before he left is he kind of made sure that, things were based on the Constitution. Regardless how you feel about Donald Trump, the fact was it's very hard to find any type of infringement on the Constitution that Donald Trump said. Say what you want about him, but as far as honoring the Constitution, even when he had time to go crazy buck wild power, when the coronavirus thing happened, he could have started locking down. He could have done martial law. People were saying he was going to do all sorts of crazy stuff. He 100% respected the Constitution. So for me, it's all about the Constitution. What I see now, though, is that is not just getting eroded. They don't even need to touch the Constitution. They're getting the corporations to do their work for them. So here's my question, Jake. Do you see Facebook, YouTube, Google, all the corporate powers of the world, do you see them going, quote unquote, Republican anytime soon? If not, then the question is, in this day and age, in the next 10 years, what I see, the rule will not so much be the government tyranny, it's going to be the corporations that are the muscle for the government. That is how they're going to basically get away from the Constitution, so people can't say, hey, wait a minute, government, you're stepping on the Constitution. The private enterprises, these corporations, are now to the point where they can silence you, they can disappear you, they can do anything, and there's nothing in the Constitution that goes against it. So I see it as this complete communist corporate takeover of America that has already taken place, and now they're getting all the pieces together for the Great Reset that is planned. And we're going to get into that in hour 2 as far as the economic ramifications that are coming and why they don't care about everyone being on universal income, why they don't care about everyone losing their jobs, why it's not horrifying to them is because they want everyone on the dole, they want everyone being dished out, and this whole idea of just printing more and more money for all the citizens around the world. Why are governments freaked out about that? Because they know what's coming. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, with the corporations, they have power because you have given them power. I mean, it's the whole trick of the leprechaun, right? He can't actually put his curse on you unless you sign his contract, right? He's, and so it's the whole premise of, because we use their platforms, because we depend and we start to, gain our identity from their things that they've offered us. At the same time, we're signing away our God-given rights to them for them to manipulate. I mean, whenever you see a social platform able to silence the leader of the free world,
Yeah.
You can tell that they have more power than that leader of the free world in some form or fashion. And just to tie to the the quick,
that means they're coming for everyone. If they're going to come after the like you mentioned, the president of the United States, if they're going to silence it and completely deplatform him, then anybody is susceptible for them completely coming after them as well. So to me, it was a horrifying thing. It was almost like, when Alex Jones got deplatformed, everyone was like, hey, hooray, like Alex Jones, he's crazy, whatever. But then all of a sudden when you saw a president, it doesn't matter what you think of him, the fact is he's the president of the United States, and in one fell swoop, they all in unison completely silenced him. I mean, that to me was the most shocking moment in my lifetime, quite honestly, is when you saw a sitting president be completely destroyed and taken out. His voice no longer was even existed. To me, I was like, we are going to a whole new level of tyranny. They're just getting ready. They're just getting started.
Absolutely. As the world kind of descends more and more into depravity, Second Thessalonians 2:9-10 says, the coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan with all power and false signs and wonders. And then it says, and with all wicked deceptions for those who are perishing because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. And it really characterizes the world today, because people would rather sell their birthright for a bowl of soup or for their comforts. They're going to sell their freedoms out just to be able to participate on a social platform that, doesn't allow them to speak all the truths that they might want talk about, or to have all the views that they would maybe hold as a conservative person, but they're willing to still bow to the system that is now diametrically opposed to the values that really built the Western world. And it's kind of crazy to think about how things are so quickly slipping into really a lawless world. And
1984.
Exactly. And what I mean by a lawless world, for those who are tuning in, that, it's so important to recognize that it is men of conviction and men of faith that built the free world. But whenever you have a system that is so focused and fixated on the politically correct culture and the cancel culture and all that, for anybody that might speak up against a minority view, which, a lot of times is contrary to the scriptures that, the founding fathers built the Western world upon, I think that's where we see this clash of the people that are going to hold on to their freedoms and the people that are going to sell them for a bowl of soup. And that's the day and age we're entering into. And that's the people that they're going to say, you know what? If taking an experimental gene altering thing is going to allow me to participate in culture and go to the movies and be able to go. So you mentioned something about the Western world kind of the United States leading the world as an example. Yeah. Well, a microcosm of the United States is, of course, their greatest ally, Israel, right? And so whenever we look at Israel as the standpoint of future progressivism,
it's horrifying what's going on in Israel. We can definitely talk about that in an hour too. We can open that up because, like you would think on the last place on earth that would be carrying badges around and doing what they're doing would be, Israel. But again, it seems like they're falling right in line with this entire Great Reset New World Order agenda. I have to go to a break here in about a minute. So before we go to break, I wanted to mention to everyone that Scientism Exposed 1 and 2. I had mentioned this on the last broadcast, but I have completely run out of posters for the combo special. You'll see here where you get 1 and 2 and the book, you get the free poster. So I've decided to give a free DVD with the combo, so you get an extra DVD. But I said, wait a minute, I want to extend the special. I want to give a free DVD for anything. So if you buy a DVD, you're going to get a second DVD. If you buy a book, you're going to get a DVD. Anything you buy, you're getting an extra DVD. So you can go to celebratetruth.org, celebratetruth.org, and you can go to my website. You can see all this stuff here. The trailers are on, the books, the DVDs, and also keep in mind, you can also watch it for free on YouTube if you want to check that out. But it's great to get it out. What Jake and I have been talking about is scientism, and it is around and it is stronger than ever. The authority, the Trojan horse called scientism that basically is masquerading themselves as truth is nothing more than an agenda and lies. The real science is long gone, guys. Not to say science is bad. It's a beautiful thing. The question is, how much real science is being done? Not a lot anymore. They're not producing the data. There's no empirical evidence whatsoever. Let's just see the evidence before you start injecting us, before you start telling us to social distance and wear masks. Show us the data. Show us the real science. And guess what, guys? Like we've been saying all along, there is no evidence. Just like when it comes to creation, when it comes to the lies of evolution, the origins, all this stuff. And it's all packed into Scientism Exposed. I put it in the documentaries. You can watch it and you can find out. And I would imagine you're going to be shocked at what you learn when you find out how deep this rabbit hole goes. It goes really, really deep. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with Jake and a lot more here in hour 2. So grab a bite to eat, go to the bathroom, get back real quick because we got a lot more to cover. This is Celebrate Truth Radio. We'll be right back.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
And Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came, and also the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Welcome back to Celebrate Truth Radio. This is Hour 2. It is April 17th, 2021. My special guest this evening is Jake Grant. In Hour 1, we're going through so much that's going on in the world, from the tyranny to the class divisions to the racial divide to the agenda of the Great Reset. And in Hour 2, I wanted to kind of dive into some areas that fall in line with what we're talking about, but we definitely want to get into the economical, financial level of what we're seeing take place around the world. That's an important thing that I've done multiple shows on, the importance of being protected to make sure that you're outside of the financial matrix, not just being outside of the matrix itself and being awake. It's one thing. You've got to be prepared. And it's really important to be diversified and to be prepared for the days that are coming. Make sure that you do have, food and water, that you do got, plans in place, no matter how bad it gets. And sometimes people will say, well, that's crazy and you shouldn't live in fear. And it's not about living in fear. It's about being a good steward and being smart. I always go back to the story of Joseph when he was told that there would be 7 years of famine and there'd be 7 years of plenty. And in those 7 years of plenty, what was he commanded to do is to store up for those days that it was tough, but also not just for Egypt, but also for other nations. And this is the great thing to think about, is when you know what's coming and you know times are going to get tough and you can be prepared, you can also help your neighbor. Loving your neighbor is a commandment, and it's important that we truly do show the love of Christ, especially in times that are very difficult for people. So when you are blessed, keep thinking that you will have times that God will call you to be that light in many different ways, not just preaching the gospel, although that is foremost the most important thing. But again, giving to the poor, feeding the hungry. These are things that are important. And there are times that are coming that are going to be very tough. And we need to band together. Jake, in all the times that you've been talking about this and getting into the, the world we live in, what's the most common question you get from people? Like when you start talking about, what we're heading to, what things are looking like, what do people usually ask you, whether it's out of despair or maybe they just want to look to you for answers. What do you get from people, do you find?
So in my line of research and interviews over the years, I really have had a lot of focus on biblical prophecy and kind of looking at events on the world scene and how they can line up with possible prophetic fulfillment. And, oftentimes anybody who's, I talk to is usually like, well, hey, what's your perspective on, the end times and where do you think we're at? Because we see all this crazy stuff happening on the world, and we know that you like to interview all these people with a wide range of views and topics, and that's usually what I really enjoy talking about, at least when somebody asks me about my opinion on real world events and things that are coming on the scene. Is we're entering into a day and age where it's going to be really important to store up one thing, in my opinion, and that one thing is obedience to the word of God. And the reason that is because when you look in the scriptures, you see that there is a promise given to those that treasure the word of God above jewels and riches and gold. And that promise is that he will protect them in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the fire, in the midst of the tribulation and the persecution and all the crazy judgments and plagues and things that are poured on the world. Guess who he is looking to and who he is putting a hedge of fire around, protection around? It is those who treasure and walk out and love his word and have that faith in Christ. And those are kind of the topics that really get me fired up, because right now, if we are entering into end times type scenarios, and now, I'm not here to say the end is nigh, it could be this year. But what I do think is that at all points throughout history, we see cyclical patterns of the end was nigh in their day and age, because we all have a day and a reckoning, and what time we live in, it depends on what that reckoning is. But the litmus test for those that come through the fire unscathed are those that held true to their faith and held true to the word of God and did not give up in the face of adversity. And we see in the end of the Old Testament, as it were, if you haven't yet, tear out that page in between Old Testament and New Testament, because it is one testament. But at the end of the book of Malachi, you see this promise. And the promise is this, is that before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, he will send to you Elijah the prophet. And Elijah the prophet has got this role to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers, lest he strikes the earth with a curse. And to really understand what that means and the significance of this spirit of Elijah and why it really will have an important role in the type of the atmosphere of the current climate of the world that we're seeing, is the spirit of Elijah was this. When we look at the story of Elijah, he had this spirit of reproof. He basically said this to the people that believed they were serving God and believed that they were serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they were saying, we're going to serve God, but we're also going to serve Baal here on the side. And we're going to serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but we're also going to be politically correct and intermingle with those people who are practicing idolatry around us. But what Elijah did is he stepped on the scene and he said this: if Yehovah, if Yahuwah is God, then serve him. But if Baal is God, then serve him. And what we come to find is that when people begin to serve, God in their own way, they, in a way, are making themselves to be God, because they're saying, I'm going to do it in the way that I see fit, not in the way that he sees fit. And that's where we can see, prophetic verses like, they are going to deliver you up in the synagogues and put you to death, believing they're doing service unto God, but in fact, they're serving demons. And what does that mean? It means that even in churches today, you're seeing the precursors of, terrifying things like that. Where
that's a good point. It's a good point you bring it up, because the most hate right now that Grace Life Church is experiencing are from fellow churches. So again, they've gone on the record saying, that, and again, I've seen it myself in comments, and you're right. I mean, you're seeing, churches even coming forward, siding with the government and saying, how dare them, and this is not Christ-like at all. But my point is, and what you're bringing up is 100% in line, that even, your own quote unquote brothers and sisters or people that profess to be in the faith will be the ones that turn you in.
And that's a terrifying, reality check for a lot of people. And once again, goes back to that premise I was talking about of, these divisions that are happening are evidence of a coming harvest. These separations of these groups really reminds me, the story of Gideon's army, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you had a large army showed up and they were all willing to go and fight the battle. But Gideon had, he was told by God to, put these people through these tests, and the number of men was shifted and sifted down to just a few hundred men in the very end. And whenever we talk about the preparation of the church and the coming of the day of the Lord, that if it is soon, if we are entering into the time that is characterized as Jacob's trouble, then we are going to see a refinement of those who claim to be the people of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's why we need to be keeping ourselves in check, that we don't prop up in ourselves little idols or these little distractions that take our attention away from being watchmen. And we don't want to be those people still dealing with our little pet sin, when we need to be hearing those above and beyond, things from the Spirit of God to lead us to go places and to, prepare us when, we need to be standing up boldly for truth, boldly for righteousness, but we're still dealing with, our little secret, pet sins. And I think that's what, this time is really starting to put people to the test. Is it is in the face of tribulation that the church is purified. That in the face of persecution, you really see who have a heart for the Most High and have a heart for loving their neighbor and loving God with all their might and strength, but also the people that weren't really in it for the right reasons, or rather the people that have made other things their God, like science their God, even though that might be going to church on Sunday. If they decide to turn you in, it's not because they don't believe they're following God and serving God. It's because they're following and serving a God that is not the God of the Bible. They're serving a God of science, or they're serving a God of their belly, or they're serving, a Jesus that is a lawless Jesus. And that's the sobering thing as we enter into this day and age is people really do believe they're doing right. And what it has been is it's a time that has turned fear into a virtue. So that people that feel rewarded for being, demonstrating that they are afraid of this virus by, putting on the mask and being, triple masks and showing, look, this is how afraid I am of the virus, and it's a virtue now, and I'm going to look down on you if you don't exhibit that same amount of fear, to the point that our whole society is going to be swept along with this rushed scientific agenda, and people who don't get the vaccine or don't fall in line or don't give up their freedoms, they are going to be painted as the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this total bait and switch that is so mind-boggling and just, you know, frustrating, because it really is the people that, you know, they have the right heart and they don't want to just blindly go into things that are going to be painted as these rebels and these, you know, people that are science deniers. But are they really, or are they just not willing to rush into the decisions that you're willing to rush into?
Well, that's the scary thing too, is you're not even allowed to question the science anymore. And science, I tell people all the time, science is all about questioning. I mean, if you want the definition, science is all part of questioning. It's a scary day and age that we live in, when you are even to the point now where cancel culture is just out of control, where you can literally lose your livelihood. You can be canceled in a minute for dare even questioning. I mean, some of the contents that we're talking about here on YouTube, it won't be very long before it's gone as well too. But the fact of the matter is, even questioning, Jake, the election, that was deemed not, you know, that's the whole point. My point is, they don't even, you know, allow certain trains of thought. And that's where the tyranny comes into it. The 1984 level is thought crimes exist. I mean, thought crimes now exist in 2021. How scary is that? If you even think a certain way and you express or give your opinion that doesn't fall in line, it will not be accepted. And I believe it's only a matter of time. I mean, they're making examples. You know, we talked about the church here in Edmonton, you know, obviously making an example to scare everyone else. Again, fear. But also, you know, Trump, I mean, definitely sets a fear in a lot of people to the point where I got to be careful what I say, because if they're going to take out the president of the United States, my goodness, they're coming for me too. So it does instill that fear, but they're not pulling punches anymore. They're not even hiding. They're saying, we are fully in control. And if you don't like it, too bad. You know, this is the way it's going to be. So that's why I always sit there and say, we have to somehow recognize that if this is the world we're going to live in for the next few decades, and we'll get back to the whole end times, because I'm very fascinated to hear your thoughts of where we're at, what could be happening. But again, in that time of the end times, we know it gets incredibly bad. There is no quote unquote light at the end of the tunnel short term. So the whole essence of being in tribulation type environment days, where we're seeing is it's an adaptation that we as believers, as the light of this world, as darker as it gets, we truly have a role to play as believers. And I think that's important, you know, that we bring out here as well. But getting into where we're at, maybe you can lay out what you see happening. Again, you're not a prophet. You're not saying, you know, thus saith the Lord. You're just saying, this is Jake's opinion. But what do you see taking place over the next decade, Jake? And how close do you think we possibly could be?
Now, let's just lay it out first by addressing the cancel culture topic. Is when you look and see that plastered all across the internet and these social media platforms that are practicing cancel culture is pornography, that, you know, and things that are just polluting the minds of our youth and our, you know, every day you turn into HBO or Netflix and it's soft pornography. You know, it's you know, TV shows that fill your mind with dark esoteric concepts, witchcraft. All of these things are not, you know, being targeted by cancel culture.
No.
And what that is it's a sign that, you know, the scripture is fulfilled where it says the things that are evil will be called good and those that are good will be called evil.
Correct.
You know, this is a really sobering day and age that we're living in, is when they come after a children's book, but not incest porn, that, you know.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yeah. Good point.
And oh man, so just talking about the day and age we live in, you know, the end of time, you know, the time before the coming of Christ is characterized as a time of lawlessness, right?
Well, really, pedophilia, if you want to get into the sexual depravity, I say this all the time, really the only level that is left in society to steep to, which is not there yet, thank God, but again, it's full on embracing of pedophilia. But there is, everything under the sun now is permissible. It's not permissible. They have parades about it. They literally celebrate it. It is the only sin. It is the only sin that is celebrated, and they have parades, and the cities stop in adoration of it, that to me is a sign that we're incredibly close. When you get to a point where you're not just gloating on it, where the entire society as a whole celebrates in with you and gives you an entire month, not just a day, gives you a month. And you know what sin I'm talking about, right? Pride, right? The whole pride thing to me is very intriguing because, again, it's to the level of we don't have parades for adultery. We don't have parades for lying, right? So what I'm saying is in the sin category, what you brought up, Jake, is really profound because we're at a point right now where there isn't too much more in the level of depravity to get to. That's why I am a big believer that we're incredibly close because how many more generations, how sick is it going to get? We're pretty much there now as far as, bestiality and all these things that are mentioned in the Bible. But the one thing that overall society as a whole, definitely shun, and I know that they're inching their way in and it's still a while yet. That gives me a bit of hope that we're not that close, but we're close. What's your thoughts on that as far as how depraved we are as a society and we embrace it and we celebrate it and have parades about it?
Yeah, so I mean, pride cometh before the fall, right? What kind of pride are we talking about here? Well, look at every single empire throughout history and what led to the collapse of those empires. And I don't want to come across like, hey, I'm picking on this particular sin over another.
Yep.
I think really as a culture, the Western world has too much pride in general, whether it's that variety or another. And I think what the Conservative Party missed the boat on, at least during the last year, is they didn't realize that was their opportunity to completely humble themselves and bring themselves low and repent of their little sins. But we were so caught up in pointing the fingers at the left or pointing the fingers at, the issues all these other people got that we weren't addressing the little idols in our own home and our own addictions to pornography, our own addictions to our favorite TV show that was full of witchcraft and evil and the promotion of, mental concepts that basically fly in the face of the Word of God. And it was by, believing ourselves to be, more right that we missed the boat in humbling ourselves that would have brought the mercy and would have allowed God to, turn the boat around, so to speak. And at all times, I kind of want to be, careful because I don't want to come across saying, hey, somebody who's practicing this sin is somehow, far
No,
worse.
let's go on the record and say sin is sin. It's still, abhorrent to God. It still separates us. There's no doubt. And I'm not going to get into that category either. But again, sin is sin. But I just find it intriguing that there are certain sins that are paraded and celebrated where you don't see that with other sins. But let's all agree that sin is sin. It's bad. It's not good. And it separates us from God.
Absolutely. And that's the message that people really do need to recognize is we are no better than the people parading it down the street.
Correct.
If we're still harboring it in our hearts and in our bathroom, in our closets or whatever. So the point is we need to we need to repent of all of the things that we're doing that are bringing these curses on our land, bringing these curses in our governments and our nation. And it's really this mindset of appeasement and political correctness that is causing the degradation of society because we are tolerating a society that pumps out media that is filling our minds with all of these agendas, and it's just treated as, it's entertainment. Well, no wonder people are parading certain things in the streets is because they're rewarded and they're shown that people in these TV shows are being celebrated and rewarded for, standing up for their personal little sin, whatever that sin might be. And, I think that's kind of the heart of the issue is whenever you see a line drawn in the sand, and you see the righteousness of God declared, and, especially, in consideration of how, over the past few years, you have the whole Bible movement, people returning to, keeping more of the commandments and than even the church in the past few hundred years thought were applicable. Now people are doing more and more, and they're saying, wow, I want to love the Word of God. I want to keep these things. Well, I believe the principle that he will not tempt you greater than you can bear applies sometimes to both sides of the scale. He's not going to put a temptation to sin in front of you to the point where he takes away your free will. He's always going to give you an out.
Yeah.
But also the converse is true with the good. He's not going to allow, the good to tempt you far beyond you can bear, because, then you're not going to choose the good. Then it'll be like a forced choice. He's not going to infringe upon our free will. But also at the same time, it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And, all of the technology that has allowed us to access these different concepts, whether it's the good or the bad, that is kind of puffing everyone up. And it's drawing a line in the sand. People are recognizing what good and evil is. And when they willfully choose to turn away from the good, then righteously the judgment of God can be poured out, because they've turned their back on what they know is right. But, for many years, people in ignorance might have practiced things that weren't right. But whenever they're confronted with the truth, they have the opportunity to repent and to turn around. And, I think that's what we're seeing today, is a generation of people that have so hardened their hearts to what is right and wrong that they are now finding identity in things that are explicitly wrong, and they're waving them around as these things that they should be joyful and proud about. And that's what's really terrifying about the day and age we live in, is it's whenever we, in the face of the truth of God, reject it, that we are now accepting the judgment to be poured out on us. And we're seeing a whole generation of people that are saying, we know that this is the opposite of truth, and we know that this is a lie, but we're going to buy into it wholeheartedly, and the consequences follow quickly after that. And so when we talk about timetables, right, it is the more people harden their hearts, that the more judgment righteously can be poured out. And so, I hate to say timetables, in terms of like,
sure,
what will happen when, but I will say this is, whenever you see righteousness rise up, people realizing the whole truth of the Word of God and starting to walk it out in a fuller and fuller way, you also see on the opposite side of the spectrum true idolatry being raised up as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the true prophets of God step onto the scene, you're going to see those prophets of Baal. Whenever you see Elijah the prophet, you're going to see Ahab and Jezebel. It's because, God is not going to allow one side to get out of balance,
sure,
more than the other, because he wants us to choose. And that's what's so amazing about these people that are going to start rising up in this day and age. And this is really what in terms of timetable, that I'm super excited about is, you're going to see a generation of people that are going to flat out not give in to the system. And
yes,
they are going to stand up and stand for the right things. And they're going to be bolder than you're going to have seen in 150 years, all the way back to those people that, really stood up to the church system and the persecution there in Europe. And we're like, you know what?
It's like another fight. It's like another fight, Jake, with, the whole scientism thing. What I noticed in 2015, 2016, 2017, and going forward is that there was an entire legion of people behind the Christians that were fighting Satan on the lies of evolution, right? This huge lie to destroy the entire credibility of the Bible or creation, or that there is even and indeed a God. There were so many people that were fighting alongside believers. And I see the same thing happening now, that they're fighting for righteousness, even though they're not part of the family, they're not kind of quote unquote on the team, they're kind of aiding and helping this fight. So there is a lot of people from all different walks that are fighting the system at this point, because they know deep down inside things aren't right. My kids shouldn't be forced to be taught these horrible things in grade 2, from whatever, this entire narrative that they're spinning, people are standing in this fight. So I see this kind of correlating between, the lies, when we were talking before, the spiritual aspects of this world. Before, it was always just kind of the believers and Christians that were fighting against the lies of evolution and, creation and all this. But what happened is all of a sudden, a lot of people arose and awoke to the fight, not necessarily coming to the true creator of creation, but they still realized, wow, there is a creator. And it was like half that battle, and they kind of joined that fight. I see the same thing taking place now. Interesting enough that God is waking people up that aren't even 100% for him, but they're now kind of being used in that fight. Because like you said, he will always kind of allow that balance to take place, even though the odds always look so crazy. And we see this all through the Bible. It'd be like, 100,000 to, 20,000 people. You know what I mean? And you'd be like, how could 20,000 do anything against 100,000, man army? And yet God showed his glory, through these battles that took place. And I see the same thing happening in our time, that even though the odds don't look in our favor, we have, the greatest odds when it comes to what we're doing for him, and how he's being, he's using us for his glory. You know what I mean? So Jake, I see that continually happening. And I think people are, need to recognize that truly the creator of this world, totally, this is not oblivious to him, understands that evil's intention, evil, and again, he laughs at them, but he also allows it to take place, but also for our maturity, for our growth, we have to go through the fire to be refined, if that makes sense. So I do believe that, judgment comes to the church first, sort of thing, but also judgment itself doesn't necessarily need to be wrathful. It needs to kind of be judged. And I think we fall in that judgment as well. Like you said, Jake, we've gone way, far away, sort of thing, whether we're watching Hollywood movies or we're into, pornography, or we're into different things. And it's a way of being cleansed and coming back and saying, this is serious. We are entering into incredibly, I'd say we already have entered into very serious times. I don't know if people really understand the magnitude of how serious of times we're in. You can't get any bigger of, insanity levels of watching it unfold before your eyes. All we can do is pray and say, God, where do you want me in this battle? Where do you want me to have an impact? And I think that's really important. And also helping people to be equipped and get ready for what's coming. And one big way that I've been saying a long time, Jake, is when it comes to financially, they're about to wreck a lot of people. They're about to decimate and destroy. They're destroying businesses. They're destroying livelihoods. Maybe we can talk a little bit, financial, because I know for you, you've really awoken. And you've also started finding some really great solutions to kind of get outside of that system. And I think more and more people really need to understand, what do they do when it comes to protecting themselves, not just preparing for the future, but also financially, because, we need money to operate in this world. And even though we're not going to be, the love of money is the root of all evil. We're not talking about being swept away from the love of money. We're saying, looking at it as being a good steward of what God has entrusted you with. And he's presented us with a lot of different things. And maybe you can kind of comment a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing that there's so many things all kind of culminating in the past few years. And let me just finish one thought just briefly before we move on to kind of the financial realm is, it is in the face of tribulation that God gets people to the point he wanted them to be the whole time. It's in the face of hard times that we're refined and we're caused to blossom into somebody who is bold and stands up in the face of adversity and doesn't bow in line to the whole political correct culture thing. And, and this is, it does tie into this, this topic of the financial revolution happening right now. Is not only is this a great reset that they're using the medical monopoly and the medical tyranny to kind of reshift how power and authority operates, but also backed up with that, you see a financial revolution happening through cryptocurrencies. Really in the past 4 or 5 months, the mainstream adoption of cryptocurrencies has been accelerated far beyond what any of us could have predicted. And, it's funny, Robbie, sometimes I just am blown away by the weird places that I end up in life. Over the past few years, it's been quite a whirlwind for me and my family. But, I actually, I ended up with a very unique job opportunity. Ended up getting hired in January as a private contractor to run the YouTube channel of one of the largest asset holders in the crypto space. They have well over $10 billion worth of assets that they've announced. And I was literally working for a company that people were quitting Tesla and Google to work for. And I was working and meeting, on a weekly basis, helping with their live stream show and interacting with this company that is on the forefront of the cryptocurrency sphere of influence. And, I was able to really absorb a lot of understanding about the crypto space and this financial revolution that is literally happening under our noses. And while there are so many things that are distracting on the news and topics about the medical world that are getting people worked up, and the political world that are getting people distracted, at the same time those things are happening, changing the landscape, there is also the future happening now. And that future is the financial revolution that is about to change how the world operates to a fundamental level. Right now, Robbie, the blockchain, which is, cryptocurrency is based on this technology of the blockchain. The blockchain is about to eat the internet. And from what I've learned over the past few months working, in the crypto space, I have come to realize that in the same way that in the early 90s, the internet revolutionized the information world, the blockchain is about to, in a likewise manner, revolutionize the financial realm in a way that will make, some amazing things possible, but also just like, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? It allows us to use this technology for amazing good things, but at the same time, this same technology can be used for bad things, and terrible aspects of prophecy can be fulfilled through this technology literally budding at our feet right now. Like literally in the past 3 months, if you guys haven't heard about, Bitcoin yet, you probably don't have a cell phone or internet or TV because it's all over the place, right?
So a lot of people, when I started introducing people to that, because I've been in, Bitcoin since 2013, a lot of people, especially believers, oh my goodness, mark of the beast, and oh my goodness, it's evil, and, CIA created it. And I know you probably got this from a handful of people, but maybe really quickly, you just want to maybe explain kind of how was your process through that when you first came across it? Did you start thinking the same thing? Like, wait a minute, something seems off here. Like, I want to research it. Was that your experience, or did you just kind of think it was great from day one?
All right. Well, right off the bat, when you talk to somebody about crypto, often the thing you see in their eyes is dollar signs. There is amazing opportunities right now for people to change their financial world through early investing. We're still at the first 10, 15% of early adoption. It's not really even hit mainstream, adoption yet. But whenever we talk about the application of the blockchain technology, it's important to realize that the triple ledger entry system, the blockchain, which allows a single person's transaction to be recorded on multiple nodes throughout the world, and for that ledger system to be cross-referenced to pretty much permanently be able to tell, how a financial transaction was received or sent, or where it was sent, when it was sent. This type of technology is the foundation for, the biblical premise of a mark of the beast, where somebody would not be able to buy, sell, or exchange unless they were involved in some, worldwide system. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we're not there yet. And while we might be contributing to a system that is building the Borg brain of whatever this one world currency might be, according to the biblical scriptures, right now, the opportunity to leave the fiat system and to reap the benefits of this early stages of a technology really could help us escape the coming beast system, if that's what we're trying to, watch out for as Christians. That's on our mindset. We're trying to be, careful. We've all been to church and heard the different theories on the mark and the Antichrist and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of real world application, right now, the opportunity to use it to escape another evil system, the fiat currency system, is actually, it's not a bad thing. You see, people are really kind of get worked up about blockchain technology and different cryptocurrencies because they're like, oh, well, it might be used for bad things. Well, do you know that your dollar is used every day for incredibly bad things?
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention that it's a debt-based system that is accruing exponential amounts of debt. You're in a system right now that is designed to suck wealth from the general population and pump it into the pockets of the powers that be or whatever. Every single day, inflation is eating away that money that you have sitting in the bank. And, you're worried about digital currency. You're worried about a number on a screen. Well, did you know your dollars in the bank are just numbers on a screen?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just talk about this for a second. In a bank, every year, the dollar inflation eats away the spending value of your dollar. And just in the last 10 years, 70% of dollars that are in existence or have been in existence have been printed in the last 10 years. So that's a 70% increase of the total number of dollars that have ever existed have been printed in the past decade. And if that doesn't show you the signs on the wall that, there's a fast approaching hyperinflation or bubble pop event that is coming to the fiat currency world, then, you're holding on to a lie. And I'm sorry to tell you that, but your number on a screen on your ATM is no more safe than your number on a screen in a cryptocurrency wallet. So let's just first lay it out that way. And of course, in terms of real world preparation and financial advice, we have to make the statement, we're not giving financial advice, right? But in my opinion, we are in a time of preparation. That you mentioned Joseph in the 7 years of plenty and then followed by the 7 years of famine. Well, what did Joseph do? He recognized the time of prosperity that could be taken advantage of. He monopolized on it. He used the wisdom that God had given him to stow away a nest egg. And then that nest egg allowed Egypt to become the superpower of the world because he had basically prepared them. And in the same way, we also have this opportunity to hedge against what economists are saying is the writing on the wall for the collapse of the petrodollar system and the fiat currency system that we all are interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And one of those hedges is the cryptocurrency space. So, I'm not saying don't invest in hard assets, gold, silver, land, all that kind of stuff is very important in terms of, investing in and hedging against, hyperinflation that is really being even expedited by the $2 trillion stimulus plans that have been forced down our throats because of the coronavirus seasons. But also cryptocurrency, because of how it's created, it allows it to be a system of wealth preservation if there is some type of collapse. And whenever you look at Bitcoin, for example, it's only a technology that's been around for 12 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Robbie, you've been into the crypto space since 2014, so I'm preaching to the choir to you, but the way I'm speaking, I'm trying to kind of relay the message to the person who's the generation that's a little bit distrusting. You heard
Sure.
a little bit too much about email scams and people trying to get your money. Well, did you know that right now there are services available where you could take the money from your bank account, invest it in a stable coin, which is still tethered to the US dollar value,
Mm-hmm.
and you can gain up to 10% annually in just yield based on just having it in a crypto wallet? And that's compared to what the bank would offer, which is less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
less than 1%, and then they take your money and they loan it out at a 20-to-1 ratio, and they charge fees for the credit, and they're earning all the money on your money that you could have been earning on your money. And cryptocurrency has finally flipped the switch and given the earn potential back into the populace so that you can now reap the benefits of your money being either, loaned out, or staking your money, or using your money to buy things that are appreciating in value, like a digital gold. And all of these are, up and start kind of concepts that really, it's only the past 3 or 4 years that, some of these newer crypto projects have kind of gotten off the ground, but it is still so early that somebody can, put, $100 away a month and reap enormous benefits if we do have more time. That's my caveat. If we're not literally at the door and we have a few more years and cryptocurrency becomes the mainstream system of value exchange, then we do have an opportunity to use this technology to benefit, for example, the Christian community. And, that's something that, I know you kind of got wind of, Robbie, but, I see a need in the Christian community, in the conservative, world that could really utilize this technology of cryptocurrencies to kind of, escape the system, as it were, and to start to interact with each other and create a system of exchange and value that really brings people of like-mindedness together. And so that's kind of been on my heart and mind recently. Now that I've kind of become grounded and understand how the technology works, what its uses are, how it can be used for good and evil, I realize that if we can get on the ball fast enough and we can, kind of get a little bit of research under our belt, we can utilize this opportunity to do enormous good. And that's really where I'm at with the cryptocurrency space, Robbie.
So you're looking at putting something together then, and you're in the middle of, kind of planning, kind of putting that framework together on an idea. And when you explain about doing a lot of good, how do you see that taking place?
Well, I see there's two major needs, specifically in the Christian community. One of those needs is creating a system of connection between Christian businesses, Christian, ministries that bring people of a like-mindedness together to be able to accomplish things for the kingdom of God. And not only that, but, people often, they tithe into the church system, and that tithe money ends up going to fruitless things like keeping the lights on in the church or paying the pastor's, car bill. And I don't mean to bash on people that have, in good faith donated and participated in those systems, because, sometimes those funds can trickle down to good causes. But imagine a system of the Christian community being able to operate almost as like a hive mind and to direct funds generated from our investments as a community and direct those funds to the projects that we as a whole believe will produce the most fruit. And those are the two needs. One is the social aspect. We see, conservative views are being censored out the wazoo in all these different social networks. So that, for one, is a major need in the Christian community, but also the ability to redirect our resources towards the projects in the kingdom of God that'll bear the most fruit. And so both of those questions can be solved with the cryptocurrency solution. And I have, a really cool idea, and I won't go into specifics, but let's just say I took a nap and I woke up with a really great idea. And I've been kind of going around speaking with many friends of mine, pitching them the idea, and they seem to be getting as excited as I am, Robbie. And the concept is this: is that if the Christian community can come together and get ahead of the curve when it comes to this technology, we can accomplish some amazing things. And, right now, there are many opportunities for people in cryptocurrency to generate wealth, to make a lot of money. If you choose the right investment, the right coin, the right low cap project, you could probably make an amazing return. So if that's your primary focus, I'm not necessarily pitching to you, because you can do that as it is without any new idea. But how do you create a project that offers those two solutions to those two problems, but at the same time helps build real world wealth in the pocket of Christian ministries, business owners, and does so in such a way that allows our community to come together and accomplish amazing things? And so that's kind of my passion. And I'll just throw the call to action out right now is I need help. I need people that are programmers, who are familiar with cryptography, who may have been involved in any kind of cryptocurrency projects or anything. I recently ended my contract with my former employer, which was a big name in the cryptocurrency space, and the timing is just amazing, because 2 days after that, somebody came and they presented to me this opportunity, saying, "Hey, if you can formulate this idea and help us bring a community together, and we can fuel that community with this new technology, then some exciting things could happen." And so I realized that just as a guy with good ideas and strong opinions, I can't necessarily make things happen unless I have a lot of help. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know I'm being pretty cryptic, but the point being is I'm looking for people that are in the cryptocurrency space. They're programmers, web designers, graphic designers, and there's an interesting opportunity right now that I'm kind of starting to get up off the ground, and that's kind of where I'm at. Is if you're interested, if you want to contact me, I'll have Robbie leave my contact email in the description under this video over on YouTube, and if you are interested, shoot me over an email and tell me how you're would be interested in helping, and maybe I can go from there in terms of connecting some more people that are interested in this same heart behind bringing the Christian community together, or people that recognize that this technology could be used not just for greed, but for good. And that's really my heart behind it.
Yeah, you definitely need to, if you haven't already. I'm sure you have, but maybe not. But, I talked to Rob Skiba maybe about 3 weeks ago. We talked for, about an hour and a half about, some things that he was kind of working on and looking into and stuff. And I think it would fall right in line, not just, with his seed project, but also, like you mentioned with ministry and stuff. I know that Rob has been, talking pretty seriously about the same type of thing. And, I'm sure there's some synergy there, and you should maybe, talk with him, obviously, with his platform and just with his reputation. I think it'd be a good, partnership. I don't know, just so everyone knows, I really don't know too much about this project. I know, very, very little, but it's coming together, and I believe that you put together, somewhat of a presentation as well. Or you're in the middle of doing that, but I know that there'll be a lot of people. That, I guess the bottom line for people that are tuning in to the radio show this evening, or tuning in on YouTube, is that cryptocurrency, even though you've heard about it, it's not evil. It's something that can be used for evil or good. And there is a lot of amazing amazing applications, and the technology is absolutely sound. Now, will the governments, will the elite, will the New World Order, take advantage of it? Absolutely. Already, you're seeing governments, you're seeing, releasing their own digital currencies on the blockchain. You're going to see this happen for sure. These are going to be centralized. These ones are going to be fully controlled. They're going to, have the full power. But when you start looking into cryptocurrency, start looking into decentralization, and you're going to see the beauty of the fact that it is not centralized, and the fact that it can't not just be shut down, and it cannot be controlled by just one person or one party. These are the type of things you want to look into. Look into good cryptocurrencies that are audited. Myself, Patricia Steer, and Paul Lindbergh, we do a weekly show every Tuesday now. We have a YouTube channel called Axion Today. We've been involved with the project, and we've done very, very well. It's very exciting. It actually pays you out in liquid Bitcoin twice a week. And you can go to our website, axion.today, and check it out. Also, we released our app for Android and for iOS. It's free. So just type in Axion Today, AXION Today, and you will see it. And you can look on the activity, and you can see people real time cashing out of their Bitcoin, and they're getting paid for just simply staking it. And as Jake was explaining, with cryptocurrency, you can grab it, you can stake it, you can, invest it, and you can make interest. And again, we've all heard about interest, and banks are giving a measly, less than 1%. Well, here's opportunities out there where you could get, higher than 10%. Jake was talking about just 10%. You can get even higher than that, but even 10%, even 7% would be really great compared to the highway robbery that banks are basically doing to the people right now. The financial elite are ripping people off left, right, and center. It's time to give it back to the people, just like the internet ideally, at the very beginning was created for. This is what we're seeing in cryptocurrencies. It will be used for good or evil. There's a lot of amazing cryptocurrencies out there. Check into. So, Jake, I'm sure very soon we'll be releasing his project or the name or the fundamentals or how it's going to work. Are you thinking that you're going to have something kind of out by, sometime this year or next year? Or what are you thinking timeline-wise?
Yeah, things are moving actually pretty fast. So, we'll definitely have a interesting presentation. My whole goal right now is, not how do we get rich quick. We don't want to create a scam. Sure. Anybody can also create a stupid coin. Yes. What? The worst thing I can imagine is somebody going, "Hey, come buy my cryptocurrency called Christ coin, and more people that buy it, the more it'll be valuable. Hey, let's all get rich." That's not kind of the heart behind it. Yeah,
you want to build some sort of a utility, something that does something that performs a function on the blockchain, and that's transparent, and that's secure, and all these things. So no, I think it's awesome. I'm looking forward to having you back when you have something more concrete as far as maybe a presentation or getting into it a little deeper with maybe a panel. But I think it's great that the Father's laid this on your heart, and that you're the one that's chosen to kind of lead the charge with this and bring a lot of great people together. So anytime you want to discuss things or throw things past me, let me know. And it'd be an honor for sure to see, how everything kind of translates and how everything goes. But we're pretty much at the end of the show here. Really appreciate everyone for tuning in. Thanks so much, Jake, for coming on. Really appreciate your insight and everything that you bring to the body and of believers, and also just the insight just to people that are tuning in that really don't know much that's going on. Again, guys, no matter how dark it gets, remember that there is the light. It is the people of God, the ones that will rise up, that will basically say no, that will be obedient to him, that will follow his commandments, and that will lead the way with what he's calling all of us to do. And again, there's been many times in history where we've seen tyranny, where we've seen things happen. But remember, there's things just like cryptocurrency that presents this beautiful freedom. It gives us these options, and that's the whole beauty thing, is we have options. Right now, we have options. You can inject yourself, or you don't have to. Again, at the end of the day, it's your choice, and it should always be your choice. So I will always fight for the right for you to have that choice. I can disagree with what your choice is, but I will fight for you to have the opinion and being able to actually choose what you want to do. So don't let the tyranny, don't let the corporations, don't let anyone start telling you or dictating what you can and can't do as far as anything that violates your conscience or that goes against the holy word. So really appreciate your time this evening. Really thanks again, Jake. We'll take care. Talk soon, everyone. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.